Hey there, everyone. This is Joe Laloon, and I've got something incredible to share with you. If you're looking to supercharge your health, I've discovered a game changer. It's called Magnesium Breakthrough from Bioptimizers. I've personally been using Magnesium Breakthrough and recommending it to everyone, clients, friends, and family. The first day I tried it, I felt a noticeable difference compared to other magnesium supplements that I've used in the past. Now, here's the thing about magnesium. It's not just about taking more of it. There are different types, each crucial for specific functions in your body. Magnesium chelate, citrate, biglycinate, malate, sucrosomial, taurate, and orotate. Magnesium Breakthrough gives you all of these forms in the optimum dose. The benefits are incredible, from promoting heart health and improving stress resilience to enhancing mood, cognitive function, and metabolic health. It even supports exercise performance and helps with better sleep quality. Let's face it, we can all use a boost in at least one of these, right? That's why I'm excited to share with you this exclusive offer. Head to the link in our show notes and use the code 3phase10, that's the number 3, PHASE10, for a fantastic 10% off your order. Don't miss out on this chance to upgrade virtually every function in your body. Try Magnesium Breakthrough today because your health deserves the best. Welcome to the Three Phase Podcast. My name is Joe Laloon, and in today's episode, we're diving deep into the extraordinary life and work of Diana Beresford-Kroeger. Diana is not only an esteemed author, botanist, and environmentalist, but also a beacon of wisdom in a modern world. With a background in botany and medical biochemistry, she brings a multifaceted perspective to her exploration to the natural world. Beresford-Kroeger's impact extends far beyond the pages of her books. She has contributed her expertise to numerous projects aimed at environmental conservation and sustainable living practices. From advising on forest management strategies to collaborating with indigenous communities on traditional ecological knowledge, Beresford-Kroeger's work embodies a holistic approach to restoring harmony between humanity and nature. Among her many literary achievements, Beresford-Kroeger's most recent book, The Sweetness of a Simple Life, offers a poignant reflection on the beauty and significance of embracing simplicity in a world often consumed by complexity. Drawing from her deep well of experience and insight, she shares timeless wisdom on finding joy, meaning, and connection in the rhythms of nature and the simple pleasures of everyday life. In today's episode, we have the privilege of delving into Diana's life's work, exploring her journey from ancient Celtic wisdom to a healing vision of the forest. Join us as we uncover the wisdom of trees, the power of nature, and the transformative potential of reconnecting with the natural world through the inspired lens of Diana Beresford-Kroeger.
The Three Phase Podcast is starting now.
Okay, I think we're good. So, Diana, welcome to the Three Phase Podcast. And first and foremost, my mom says hello.
That's hello back to her.
So I've been aware of you for a little bit since you and my mom were working on your newest book together. And in that time, I started reading your other book, To Speak for the Trees, and I was very intrigued by it. And I've been kind of continue going back to the book and listening more and taking notes as I go along, because I think it's really interesting and fascinating. And I wanted to dive in and have a conversation with you about it. But let's start maybe a little bit earlier so people have some background, and we can introduce you and kind of let people know a little bit about your story and what you've been doing along the way.
Oh my God, yes, okay.
We can narrow down.
I live outside of Ottawa, about 1 hour's drive. That's 55 minutes or so outside of Ottawa, south of Ottawa.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a scientist, and basically that's what I've been all my life.
Mm-hmm.
And apply my science to all kinds of things. And
so why don't we go a little bit into the book, and especially the beginning of the book, because that gives us a good background of how you became interested in sciences.
Well, my family was wiped out by the time I was 11, 12. And in the court system in Cork, I'm talking about Ireland, Southern Ireland in Cork. If somebody is made an orphan, and I was orphaned at that age, you get punished for it. So I was supposed to go into the Magdalen laundries, and the Magdalen laundry is a place where orphans go and young mothers who are, I would think, probably below 16 in age who have produced babies. And it is under the covenant of the Catholic Church, all of these different places in Ireland. And I would have been stuffed in there as an orphan. And I would have been expected to wash the clothes and the sheets of the people of the city of Cork who had some money for laundry services. That is what I would have been doing at the age of 12, 13, 14, up to 21 years old. And the Magdalen laundries are now exposed as places of absolute detrimental places to young women. I am talking about Tuamgraney, where I think they unearthed something like 900 babies or something, and they're still digging for them in different areas in Ireland, and it is considered to be a disgrace. The school system that was run by the colonial thinking is identical to the kind of school system that the First Nations and the indigenous people of North America had to bear. Same thing. Same idea, control of the system. So what I did is I went on my bicycle and I went to the Magdalen laundry, and I spied on the laundry. And it's up on a hill, and there are a lot of steps going up to it, and it's surrounded by a 20-foot high wall with one gate, iron gate going into it, a small iron gate. And I wanted to see what was happening there. And I saw a priest going in, and he was lifting his cassocks very carefully, and he had bespoke shoes, beautifully made shoes, and he seemed to me to be very effete. And it made the hair stand on my head, and I got goosebumps looking at this man, and I knew there was trouble. So I went home, went to my uncle's house, and I got out a pile of linen sheets, and I taught myself how to knot them and to make a length, because I saw that the upper story of the Magdalen laundry had an iron system guarding the windows too, and I planned to kill myself. So I knew that those linen sheets wouldn't fail me. So then, shortly after that, I was sent into court, and I, as an orphan, had to apply in court, and I had a solicitor called John Coakley. And what happened is that in court, the judge discovered that I was a member of the Beresford family. And the Beresford family in Ireland are all Lord Beresford, Lady Beresford, the Viscount Beresford, and I was related to the royal family also in England. I'm also related to Churchill.
Interesting.
And the judge got very worried because I have a number of relatives who are still in the House of Lords. He thought there was a very high chance he would lose his job, that being a judge. And in fact, I didn't know it and didn't realize it at the time, but I can guarantee you now that he would have lost his job. So he did know what he was doing. He called me into his chambers, and I was terrified of him. He was a big man wearing a wig, dark, the clothing is all dark, these gowns that they wear. I mean, he was terrifying for me as a young girl. And he said to me, I don't know what to do with you. And I couldn't answer that. And he said, I'm afraid that I would lose my job if I put you up in the Magdalen laundry, and you should be there. I didn't say anything to him. Then he said to me, I am going to give you a choice of where you should live. That's okay with me. And he said, well, would you like to live with your family in Ireland, or would you like to live with your family in England, right? And I said I would rather live with my family in Ireland, and I would rather live with my uncle.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he gave his blessing on the following. I, as a 12-year-old girl, was put in the care of a bachelor man who was in his late 40s, who was very famous in Ireland as a hurler. He was one of the top hurlers in Ireland, and he was capped for Croke Park 3 times. Now, that may mean nothing to you, but it would be the equivalent to Wayne Gretzky.
Yes. Yeah.
Like
A
in
very
hockey
famous
here,
athlete.
ice hockey here. Yeah, and my uncle was a famous long-distance runner too. He also was a bibliophile. He had 10,000 books, first edition books in his house.
Wow.
And he was totally away with the fairies in the sense that he had never married, but he was willing to take me on. Right? So that became my home. The judge gave his permissions for me to live with my uncle, but I had a curfew on me. I had to be in at 10 o'clock every single night, and that would last until I was 21 years old. And if I made any footsteps anywhere along the line, I would be put into an orphanage. Or even if I was 20 years of age, I understood that the curtains were closed on me.
Yeah, it was a very clear message.
Yeah, what happened then is that once every 3 months, that is 4 times a year, I had to present myself in my school uniform to the judge to make sure that I was looked after, and I also had to present him with a list of my needs. Now, I was not allowed to put on that list anything that was feminine. So they also forgot to put food on that list, that I was to be nourished.
That's important.
In a male-dominated society in the law courts, and they didn't realize that a girl needed to eat. So I lived with my uncle for a year or so. I attended a school, a private Catholic girls' convent school, which is called St. Aloysius of the Isles. It was run by nuns and some lay teachers. And so I was a pupil in there. And what happened then was kind of quite extraordinary after that. After that 1 year, my mother's family, who are called O'Donohues, and their title is O'Donoghue Bera. That's my mother's family, were aristocrats, old Irish aristocrats with very long pedigree. And my father's family were all the lords and ladies and viscounts and so on and so forth. So I was a mongrel. I came from a mongrelized system of my mother's family and my father's family, right? So my mother's family were very ancient. They owned the castle of Ross and all of the area around Killarney, up as far as a place is called Gugan Barra, up into the hills of Gugan Barra and beyond. So that was my mother's domain, my mother's family domain since the time of Christ. And of course, with the 500 years of penal laws in Ireland, they got a good walloping about because, of course, the Irish aristocracy were told that they were savages, as most people coming to Canada and North America were told they were savages, because in New York, it's no Negroes, no Irish, no dogs, right? But the fact of the matter was, is the people who did come to North America, had the money to come to North America, were all what we know as Irishans, Gaeltacht Irishans, who were of primary families, fabulous, famous families into ancient history. We don't know that. So anyway, what happened with me, I was the last child out of Ross. And my mother's relatives, 22 of them, and they were all very old then, in their late 70s, 80s, and 90s, decided to get a cabal together and they would give me my inheritance. My inheritance was not money. My inheritance was knowledge. So for long years, when I was down in Lachines, and Lachines was the area, the valley, the huge valley that goes into Loch Avon and down into Gugan Barra, and you can see Bantry Bay, almost smell Killarney there. You can see it on the internet, actually, all fixed up. And so under the ancient laws of Ireland, and now I'm talking about old laws, talking about Brehon laws, and you spell the word by Brehon, Brehon laws of Ireland, and they are pre-Magna Carta. Pre-Magna Carta laws means that they can be still put into place right now, because Magna Carta depends on previous standings. Right. So under the Brehon laws, I was made a Brehon ward. Then in the whole valley of Lachines, there would be a runner. The runner would come up to the great aunt's farm, and the runner would be a young boy with long legs, and they would say, well, Cronins want you today, or O'Keefe's want you today, or the O'Donohue's want you today. They between them had sorted out what I needed to know. Right. And then I would go to their farmhouses and I would get tutored. And that lasted for 3 years. Now, my great aunt was what's really, I would think you would call her, she had all the Druidic knowledge, and it was aus Gaelga. It means we were speaking in Irish. I mean, that kind of I'm speaking to you now. Mm-hmm. So she was the one who really held the whip hand for all of the great knowledge. And what she did with me is then she would take me on, I suppose you'd call them nature walks here at the present time. And our nature walks were brought into all the Druidic altars, the Druidic cairns, the burial areas, and then out to the Fáine area. Fáine in Gaelic is ring structure. The ring structure, that's where she got her medicine. The Fáine would be a ring fort in Old Irish, and all of the ancient ancient knowledge was set in those places, and they were protected by taboos, and the taboo would be on She Gui, the fairy wind, on She Kjolta, that there were fairies living in these places, but there weren't fairies. There were ancient Irish families living in these places, and they were protected. They were very creepy because nobody ever plowed those fields. Those fields were called sacred fields in all of Ireland, actually. And above them were the Ogham stones, the stones with the Ogham scripts, and they were tracked all around the valley of Lachines. And the great stone, the great Ogham stone, that was really an indicator stone, which was on the highest point of Lachines, was where I used to go. But there were loads of them around the valleys. Yeah. So I was taught all the old ways, Celtic language. Oigna, who was a young man in the 3rd century, took all of the oral language and put it into the Ogham script, which is known as An Ogham Creath, which is writing that you use right now. And that is early, a written form of Celtic language. But then a lot of the names are the same, like hospital, on Oispidale. On Oispidale is the old word for hospital.
I'm always looking for ways to improve my performance in the gym and my performance in sleep. And one thing that I found that really helped me with that was Magnesium Breakthrough from Bioptimizers. I've been using it and recommending it to everyone, and the results speak for themselves. It's not just about taking more magnesium, it's about getting all the crucial types in one dose. With benefits like promoting heart health and improving stress resilience, it's a game changer. Use the code 3phase10, that's the number 3, PHASE10, for 10% off your order. Don't miss out on this chance to upgrade your health today.
Interesting.
Hospitals were a Celtic invention, and they were used even in Greece and even in Rome, and the Celtic physicians were considered to be the best people in the world for treating of diseases.
Hmm.
And the materia medica of the Celtic world is now held in the Bodleian Library and is also held in many parts of Spain.
Do you think
Now
that
they're
was because
giving
they
them,
had a really good understanding of these historical and ancient medicines and use of plants and things of that nature?
well, I'll give you an idea. My Banshankas, my pedigree goes back 3,000 years.
Hmm.
So at the time, that's a long time ago, in Ireland, it was called the land of milk and honey and land of education.
Yeah.
And for some reason, the doctors in Ireland are still the best in the world. In Médecins Sans Frontières, the top surgeons are all Irish.
Hmm.
The women who put together the first answers for COVID-19,
Yeah.
the antibody system going into they're all Irish, and they're all
Interesting.
working in Oxford. Now, I can tell you there was a kind of an experiment that went through the Celtic world, and the Celtic world stretched from Ireland through the north of Africa into Galatia, Turkey, into all the Nordic countries, and then on into the Silk Road into middle of Asia. So it was a huge, huge civilization. Really smart people who were very, very talented in mathematics. They had the first calendar. We go by the Julian calendar. They did the Colotny calendar.
Mm-hmm.
That was just as good as the Julian calendar. But the kids who were smart in Ireland got 17 years worth of teaching. That is at the time of Christ. The women and the men, the same thing. If you were going to get married, the Babadoir, the man who looked at marriages, would give you a choice of families where they would make the learning, make the kids better and make the learning really brilliant. Like, say, for instance, if you were a musician, let's pretend you play the violin, they would give you a choice of families to marry into who also were musical.
Hmm.
Same thing goes for literature. The same thing goes for poetry. The same thing goes for paintings. Same thing goes for all of the language and the language skills and the dancing and the that went, and the astrology and the studying of the night sky, which was phenomenal in Ireland.
Yeah.
So automatically the families are brilliant, and it is not a surprise to find that the Irish families in North America are still, to this day, are brilliant in language, brilliant in mathematics, brilliant in medicine. Yeah, it's still there. It is still there.
Almost genetically engineered.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is, because they had special kinds of cupmares and cupmare men who dealt with animals and the breeding of animals,
Mm-hmm.
and understood the lines of animals, and the lineage of the human family and the lineage of animals were about equal. They understood. There were people who did actually studies on this. They had the druids were called Anuluna. Aluna in Gaelic are professors. Aluna, the many professors. And they had scriptoria areas where they study this. The great studying area, of course, the gathering area for all of the families was in Tara, the High Court at Tara. And I could tell you right now which families were favoured up in Tara, who were allowed to wear the colours of Tara.
Mm.
So, it was a very complex society.
Yeah.
And so I was given the privilege of all of this when I was young. And of course, I'm like a sponge. And they thought I was up to it. I didn't think I was, but you're brought around, you're shown leaves, you're asked to remember leaves, you're asked to remember smells, you're asked to remember flowers. And I didn't think I would be able to do that. But my Aunt Nellie said, no, repetition, and I did. So then there was a prophecy put on my head.
And it's an interesting combination for you where you had this pedigree and lineage of the information, and then kind of, I think while you were in school, you kind of became aware that you had a high aptitude for learning information and repeating information. And then the circumstance came into place where you had the women and the sort of the local keepers of the knowledge came together in this cabal to give you and hand that information over to you for you to use and apply and share in the modern world.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And a prophecy was put on my head.
Mm.
I was told I was a child of destiny. That I was told that at the time of now, the time you and I are alive now, that we're talking now, this would be the time of lies. It's also the time of the rooster. And it's a time where Taimi the Kela, where people are starting to recognize they need the companionship of
Mm-hmm.
and the younger people will hear that lesson before the older people will.
Right.
That there was lots of knowledge, would be lots of knowledge in the world at the time of now, but very little wisdom. And the wisdom was necessary, and I was to supply this, to glue the knowledge together.
Yeah.
And I was told to study as many subjects as I could possibly do.
Mm-hmm.
In school, when I was in school, when I was I did secondary mathematics. The teachers, the nuns, pulled me out of class. Nobody said dicky boo to me. It was my normal life. Push me and push me and push me. I didn't really realize it was happening because I had no home to go to. I'd never talk about these. I thought that was normal.
Yeah.
And then I went through university. I came up first in university, and I did double majors.
Right.
And I thought that was normal too. And so now I'm an old woman now. Now I look back and I think, God Almighty, there was nothing normal about that. Like, how did I get through all this? So I can't tell you the answer to that. I can't, except that I took this thing seriously. I really liked all the people who were so good to me, and I took it seriously that maybe there would be a time when I would global stuff.
It might have been a scenario where not knowing that it wasn't normal benefited you in the long run because you just kept plugging along and learning more. And instead of thinking like, oh, well, these other people aren't doing the same thing, you didn't even necessarily think about that. You just thought it was a normal thing to have high grades and high, knowledge intake, and it served you.
Yeah, that's really true. And actually, I got that emphasized just recently in November, last November, the middle of November. I went over to Ireland, and my University College Cork, which is now called Trinity College Cork, I think it has.
Right, yeah.
Anyway, it's the biggest university in the south of Ireland, and it's probably the most important university in Ireland, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I was given an award, an alumni award, the top award in science for, and it was the 25th anniversary, and I was the keynote speaker, but I got the top award. And it was that of all of the alumni from there, I had done the most for science.
Wow.
All different kinds of sciences. So it was a huge celebration they had a huge dinner for me, and it was just colossal thing. But some of my schoolmates were there, and I asked my friends from school, from St. Al's, were there, and afterwards I was talking to them, and they said to me, "Well, we knew you were different, but nobody wanted to ever say anything to you." And,
that's interesting.
I have these friends all my life, but they were kind to me too. See,
yeah.
They weren't horrible or mean to me. No, they weren't. And nuns were really mean to me, were really good to me, not mean to me.
Yeah.
And my teachers were really good to me. And so I thought that was all normal. And really, it's only for the first time. And some of the tricks that we played, I like to play tricks on people. They were talking to me, that's November. And then I realized, oh my God, I must have been really, really different. But they all loved me and looked after me too. So I don't know the answer to that.
And they let you grow and do the things you needed to do, maybe with not interrupting you or steering you in the wrong direction.
Yeah, and that is really true. So that's kind of remarkable in itself when you think about it, because you think about some of the kids these days on the internet.
Yeah.
horrible things and people being mean to people. But I didn't get that. I got compassion and love. And,
Yeah. Support.
And I do think now I was very lucky.
One subject from the book that I really kind of cued in on, and I think it makes sense as a good conversation point to go from sort of this old ancient world information and how you tied it in with new science, was the concept of always leave enough for the seventh generation. Could you tell me a little bit more about that concept and kind of how it's applied to different studying that you've done?
Yeah, yeah. And I was told, but this is that was some of my first lessons, really, going around the fauna, going around the great circle of the fields. It was the ancient circle, and we knew it as the She Fort, fairy fort, and that in Lachines it was the She Gui and the Alta and She. They were the fairy places where all of the ancient things plants had never been disturbed for at least 2,000 years. So going around those places, there's a limited amount of, let's say, pennyroyal, and maybe wild strawberry, and another one, maybe the wild mints, mild mints, and so on and so forth. You walk around, my great aunt would say to me, there's only so much here. And you can see, in the big fauna, that there was only so much of that ancient vet that you can only pick to the seventh. And I said, what do you mean? She said, you have the little that you need, only what you need, leave the rest for the future. And the next time I heard those kind of words spoken were by the Mohawk people.
Yes.
And it's again the seventh generation. So they have what's known in Akwesasne as the fire keeper. I was asked to go down to address the Assembly of First Canada. And the fire keeper did not told me he didn't leave. He was fairly young, I would say, not leave the reservation. I spent a whole evening with him. And he told me that he thought that some of the messengers from ancient Ireland he told me that, and indeed we have legends of An Tír na Nó, legends of that in Ireland, and they are part of the old legends that start with time ago, a long into the. So I was astonished, and what happened is that Cece Michel, who was the medicine woman there, he went on search for goldenrod and golden seal and so on and so forth. Bunch of them. And I was looking for a particular plant. I wanted to see it in flower because I'd never seen it in flower, in flower in books or anything.
Yeah.
They had it down there, and I said, no, this I wanted to see. And Cece brought me there to where these plants were. And she said to me, now I don't know if anybody in North America knows this, is that there are 8 medical great pharmacopoeias belonging to the Aboriginal. They're very precious. And I was brought into one of those pharmacopoeias, where an area of land that is kept absolutely pristine, and the same idea is there. You pick only what you need, only that.
Yeah, and there's a concept too of returning what is used to the earth as well, right?
Yeah. But what that does is it tells people, ordinary people, or people like you and me, do not be greedy.
Right.
Do not take everything you don't need. And it stops the vultures from coming in.
Right.
I respect that. Now in Ireland, the vulture did come in the odd time, but what they did in Ireland by way of punishment, they put the person into Coventry and nobody talked to them. They were outside of the circle of community.
Yeah.
That was a really, really worse than death experience for these people. The Irish people love to speak. They love good time. They love their families. They like to drink. They like to eat, and so on and so forth. But to be in Coventry is not a nice. So most people really did kind of respect those laws. And from what I could see down in elsewhere in other times, across the country, same thing is there. Same thing is there. Respect these things. Respect them all. Respect the earth. But the concept of earth, the concept of shape, form, divinity of shape, form, divinity of life, divinity of all creatures, is almost identical to the ancient Irish thinking that it is to the, almost identical. And indeed, one item where I was with a whole pile of First Nations people, but all of these people were their scholars and held PhDs and so on and so forth. And out in out in the western area, we were at a university, and they were doing a stress test on Ulmus americana, American elm, and it was a piece of live American elm. And one of the medicine men, who indeed had 3 PhDs, but to me, I hear the tree is weeping. So their cognizance about nature is in intense listening, in silence, and very interesting. Now, some of their medicines, the application of medicines, which of course I'm very interested in and always have been, are identical to the Mohawk people and to all of the people of the South, to the Hopi, to all of the Ohinoke people, all of the people in the South, same thing.
Do you think there was or is there a legend of a sharing of this knowledge and information?
Well, the Far Keeper did have that.
Yeah.
Did say that, yeah. Because knowledge travels like a bullet, I mean, the greatest thing you have in your head is your knowledge. If my husband's father, my father-in-law, was director of the Marshall Space Flight Center.
Right.
He said once to me and my husband, he said, lose your money, home you can lose. You lose the power over your brain. Somebody takes that from you. Yeah. Absolutely everything.
Yeah.
Well, the interesting thinking, isn't it? Interesting idea.
Mm-hmm. With your lessons that you are being taught, one of the really cool things that you were able to bridge this sort of ancient modern gap was as you started spending time in laboratories and doing tests, you were actually able to show that these sort of ancient teachings also had modern application. Can you tell us more about that?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Well, one of the things, it's very strong in my mind. There are kind of 2 things, and it's like a giant puzzle, really, in a way, if you think of a jigsaw puzzle. I used to go down, take, Sundays off. People didn't do much on Sundays. It's supposed to be a day of rest. So I'd take all my paints and a jam jar of water, and I'd cycle down to a place called Ballylicky, okay? And the river called the Ovan hits the sea at Ballylicky, and the Atlantic Sea sweeps into Ballylicky. And it's a meeting of freshwater, saltwater, okay? And in that area, there are all kinds of rare, all kinds of unusual algae, of marine life. I mean, you out there in Halifax will be very familiar with this.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, there's one species I'll just point to for the time being, known as Chondrus crispus. And it is called Irish moss, but it is also used industrially. And Chondrus crispus was one species of intertidal red algae of the Rhodales order that you could pluck when the tide was partially out and bring it in, dry it off, and it was like a curly lettuce. The red sales lettuce?
Yes.
That lettuce that it's like a smaller red sales lettuce with a bigger stump on it or bigger holdfast on it. So you get a bunch of that together, and what happened in Ireland, how they used that in Ireland was for the management of tuberculosis. And in Ireland it was also called consumption. And tuberculosis is a bacterial disease, very difficult. It gets into the lungs, into the alveolar tissue in the lungs, and it's very difficult actually for some people to get rid of. And what they used that Chondrus crispus antibiotic. They did is they boiled it up and got the mucilage out of the crispus, and then the mucilage set like a jelly. And it's just like, an ordinary jelly, and then the patients would eat the jelly, and the jelly actually had a healing property in it because it was slowly eat it. It is a healing. It is a medicinal herb. So,
and then in modern application of that, like the crossover to why and how that
yeah.
worked.
So what I did is I thought it couldn't be good, could it? I mean, no, it's simply. So anyway, I hit the books in the medical library, and actually in November I was shown my area in the library that I used to use near the window, one of the big windows out onto the quad, and I hauled down all the biochemistry books and so on and so forth, and like a detective, I backtracked it all. I tracked it, the mucilage and the connection in the mucilage and the molecular collection. Yeah, it works. That's right. This stuff works.
Yeah.
But then I started looking at a whole pile of other things. They work, yeah. I mean, it's not like it works as fast as a penicillin compound.
Right.
Actually, penicillin, if you take too much penicillin, you cause yourself a hell of a pile.
Mm-hmm.
This stuff, you take in and you pee it out.
Right.
Perfect dosage.
And you couldn't take too much.
End of story. Yeah, end of story.
Yeah.
So, I have all these things all kind of filed away in my head, and yeah, and then of course when I came to Canada, I mean, my God Almighty, you have the most extraordinary flora here in Canada, and the same thing with the First Nations people. They have most amazing things for curing heart problems and all. I mean, just not too terribly long ago, I had somebody come in here and they wanted rabies hirticellum. And that's the wild rabies with the goosegogs, gooseberries, wild gooseberries. So I have all the wild stuff here. And they came in, and there was a Cree woman sick in the city. And this fellow said to me, he said, well, I said, how much do you want? And he said, a moose mouth worth. A moose's mouth inside, the inside of a moose's mouth.
Yeah.
So we were going around thinking, how do I get something like a moose's mouth? Well, it turns out to be a liter.
Okay. Interesting.
So I had to I collected a liter's worth of this rabies, of this currant, the goosegogs.
Yeah.
And then they added a couple of more bits and pieces to it in the city, and she was fine.
Wow.
Her circulatory problems was at an end. So,
wow.
It's like we get tripped over by saying, oh, well, we have to have a liter or 2 cups for this. No, they go by moose mouth.
That's an interesting measurement.
Other measurements. Yeah. but the other, so you have to live in both worlds. You have to take in what you learn and then kind of try to apply it. And I'll tell you honestly, I never thought that we would come to the time of now. I really didn't believe that I would be writing these books, that I would be writing this knowledge, lecturing on it, lecturing in the States. I mean, I'm just back from the Kennedy Center as a keynote speaker down there. Like if you said that to me when I was young, I'd say you're full of rubbish.
There's no way.
That would never happen.
I think it's such an interesting time too, because we kind of need to check back in with other ways of doing things and ways that have been proven to have worked for such a long period of time, because we get very campy with methods and applications, and people seem to really dive in one direction and say that's kind of the only way to do it. But I think you as an individual are the sort of perfect culmination of looking both ways at the same time and giving a better insight to, there are other ways to look at this, like leaders and moose mouths, and maybe we need to broaden our vision a little more and see if we can find better solutions than just one solution.
Yeah, and what I find that on the internet, okay. On the internet, you're put on a track. You're put on a train track, okay, by way of thinking, and you follow that train track. But that may not necessarily be good. You have to be able to stand back as a human being and examine what you're doing. Examine what's being told to you. Examine what's going on around you. Because if you can't do that, you won't have democracy.
Right.
If you can't stand aside and have some critical thought and leadership thinking, then we're all going into authoritarian rules.
Right. Sheep over the cliff.
We have to, yeah, you can't, everywhere, there are lots of places in the world now where people can't question government.
Right.
Where they can't go there. And this kind of track of thinking of, like you're saying, there's only one solution to that problem. No, actually, there are many solutions to all problems.
Yes.
Different ways of doing it. But I do honestly go with the Aboriginal thinking. We can't go and destroy the planet that we're living on and we're surviving on for the sake of convenience for another country.
Yeah.
We can't do this. We can't. It's a limited resource that we have. And the limits are set, and you protect the limits by collecting to the seventh nation,
Right. As sort of a base rule to follow.
Yeah, rule of thumb. The rule of thumb. Like, there's another rule of thumb there that prevents all kinds of diseases, is that fathers don't interfere with their daughters, right? Incest is really frowned on.
Yes.
Actually, incest, when you have the parallel genomes of father and child put together, then you get really serious diseases.
Yeah.
So it also protects the father, but there's a reason why some of these things are almost our moral code, our moral law, where you got to pay attention to this.
Yeah, with the idea of maintaining order, we could say, can you tell me more about your home near Ottawa that you've kind of created? The phrase I put together was like a Noah's Ark of plants. You've been searching the planet for all these different species of trees and flowers and seeds. And can you tell me a bit more about that? Because it's pretty interesting.
All right. Now, I'll tell you what I did today. Okay?
Yes.
I'll tell you what I did today. My poor husband, he got up first and he said, what would you like? Would you like an egg or would you like cereal? All right. And yesterday I bought some brown eggs that were speckled. So I said to him, I'd like to have a speckled brown egg. So he boiled me a speckled brown egg, and I had my own bread. I always make my own bread with it in a cup of very good tea. So that starts me off. So the next thing I do is I have in the house, God help us, he has to put up with all of this. You must remember that. I had last year and the year before, I had bred a white grape, a white table grape, and a grape that will also be used in making wine. It's a real beauty and it's really hardy. So they're my babies. So I watered all of them. I have to do that in the morning and make sure that they're all okay. So then I did that, and then I have got a bunch of other little things that I'm taking care of. And then out in the front of the house, I have, oh my God, the rarest of the rare. I managed to break dormancy in the cucumber tree. Now there's only 2 of those trees left in the country.
A cucumber tree.
They're Magnolia acuminata. Wow. And there's one here and there's one down in a place called Coburg, and God knows there might be 1 or 2 more elsewhere, but I don't know about them.
Wow.
And it is a tree that produces cucumbers. Cucumbers are edible to the bird population. Seeds are dropped, red seeds are dropped in with a white string from the strobilus. And all of the cardinals come and swing around on these cones that just look just like cucumbers, and they nip off the seeds. And when you want to see the cardinals playing with these seeds, is really something else again. And the leaves are very, very long and large and boat-like. And they were part of the flora of Red Deer, Alberta, when Red Deer was a warm area. So they're very ancient in lineage, very, very ancient. And essentially, they were trees that were used by the Hudson people or the Huron people, should I say, for death masks. And for the giant canoes they made out of just kind of hollowing out a log. They made canoes out of this particular wood, but also it was a medicine tree, and it has a diquinone under the bark, and the diquinone is used for anti-malaria.
Anti-malaria.
So it's a very, very important tree actually, and it has. Oh, it's just gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'll tell you what breaks germination in this tree. I mean, it's not written up. I haven't actually published the papers. I haven't written papers myself, which I should do. I mean, like as though I have nothing else to do. But is a thunderstorm. And the nitrogen volume from lightning.
Wow.
So they're used to water, they're used to warm weather, but lightning breaks germination in these seeds.
Interesting.
So now I have out on the porch, so I'm still on my morning here. Went out and checked them all. I check them all every single day. Look at the apical meristems, look at how they're coming, and every single one of those gets watered.
Mm-hmm.
Just gently watered, warm water on the top of the soil, because I want to maintain the heat within the soil and within the plant.
Right.
They're all baby little trees, and it would be years and years and years and years since those trees, maybe 5 centuries, since those trees were growing here on this part of. But they are
and
not,
in more abundance.
They're not white man's. They're not white man's trees. They're going back to them sometime.
Yeah.
The trees will go back to them.
And they had knowledge of how to use them.
Yeah. So then, going to a more intimate item is potatoes.
Mm-hmm.
I've bred some potatoes. I got fed up of the crappy potatoes in stores, and I have a potato collection. And using some red ones and the Magdalen Blacks, so as mother plants, I've bred some of my own potatoes. And they're absolutely gorgeous. So that's my day.
Yeah.
And right now the wind is blowing like crazy, and there's a storm outside, so it means you can't go outside. I mean, it's been very icy this year.
Yeah.
But I have all of my potatoes that I've stored them. They're all marked and everything out in my pump house, and they're sitting in ash. And they're sitting in big wooden boxes that pears came up from Argentina in. And we save all, my husband is the worst one, save all those boxes and line them with newspapers, then put the ash in. And you cannot get disease in potatoes when you do that.
Interesting.
So there you go now. That's my day. And then I look out the window, and I'm looking out the window and I see Catalpa speciosa. There's beautiful orchid trees. They're not in flower now.
Mm-hmm.
And I see hemamelis outside one there. And then if I look around the other side, then I see the tulip trees. And then, see, I have an arboretum. And I'm a very, very fussy growing arboretum. And don't bring in soil in here. So because I have sterile conditions, and you go into... I make sure that no diseases are brought in here. And we have about 150 acres set in 1 square mile of forest.
Wow.
And so I have the ideal conditions. It's an absolutely cold-ass garden. It is so cold here, you wouldn't believe it. It's zone 3. It's awful. But in the Arboretum, the northern trees, the toughest trees, the coldest trees can walk south. Southern trees can never come north because of solar conditions.
And this is something that you had sought out, right? You were looking for these really strong trees that could withstand the cold of the winters in Canada.
And climate change.
And climate change.
And climate change. And some of them are feeding trees, and all of them are feeding trees for wildlife. All of them. Absolutely all of them. And and it's been very difficult. You know, the sacred tree that I have in the medicine walk, I mean, I was hung out of a helicopter with leather braces, and I was given a pair of binoculars that are used on the high seas because they were very, very powerful binoculars.
Yeah.
And I was hung out of the helicopter for 4 days with I could speak to the pilot.
Yeah.
And I didn't think I'd find that Petalea tree. I really didn't think. But there's one tree. We found one tree. And of course, I got so excited, I said to the pilot, let me down, let me down. Of course, forgetting that I was in the blinking, hung on with the leather straps and stuff. And we went down to this Oriole, went down there, and the tree was there. And of course, I'm terrified of snakes because they have got, really significant snakes down in Texas.
Yeah.
So I ran over to the tree and I put my arms around it and I started crying.
Yeah.
Because I found it. And now they're propagating it and I'm propagating it. And there's an armed guard has been standing by that tree since the day I found it.
Wow. Is it the last of its kind?
Yes.
And can you grow another one?
I am.
You are?
Wow. Then there's another one. It's a really funny one, my king nuts. Of course, I love the king nuts. Okay, if you think of king nuts, they're pecans. Your mom or somebody in the house has pecans. Every woman worth their salt has got pecans tucked away somewhere in the house for making cakes.
Yeah.
And this is bigger than the pecan, right? The king nut is a huge nut. And it was the nut that fed the savannah people for thousands and thousands of years. And it was a nut of the Great Savannah. And they're not left in Canada. There may be one tree or two trees somewhere, but I was down in Windsor, and I was helping to save a forest school for the little sausages who needed the forest school. And I asked the forest rangers if they had seen a Carya lacanosia, and that's the king nuts. Nobody had seen them. So I said, oh, for God's sake, keep looking. And 2 years later, a tin was sent up to me, and there were some nuts. There was 5 nuts in there, and that's the beginning of all my growing. And then this past summer, the tree cropped. I have 5 trees. They cropped.
Wow.
And then they were all hanging there, and Chris and I, my husband and I, of course, would go out and talk to them, like, look and see, can you see this one? Can you see that one? And then one day we went out, and, they were maturing. And Chris said to me, he said, do you see, and like, this is always the miserable thing to see, do you see that little line in the grass? There's a pathway between the road and the tree. And I looked, and right, there was a pathway worn down to the tree. And then he says, well, Diana, look up into the tree. I'm afraid your crop is gone.
Oh, no.
So the squirrels, I don't know, the squirrels got all the nuts before every single blinking nut.
So they're fed.
They're far smarter than me. I can tell you. So Chris and I went back into the house. We were really dejected because we were imagining, getting them all and sending them out to different people and starting.
Gotta wait.
We're going to have to be smarter this year, that's for sure.
Jeez. The squirrels were well fed off that tree.
Oh, yeah. No, we have gray squirrels here, gray squirrels with white ears, gray squirrels with white paws. We have black squirrels and we have red squirrels. And every other mixture of squirrels you can think. Yeah. So I don't know. We have to be smarter than the squirrels.
As you started to add more to your property in terms of trees and plants, did the biological environment change too with animals and things of that nature?
Yes, especially butterflies.
Interesting.
And actually 2 days ago, Chris comes shooting in. Of course, he's as bad as I am, except he's a very quiet man, He comes in, he says, we have saw-whet owls outside. Saw-whets. I mean, they're fantastic. Then that same day, we had cedar waxwings come into the feeders. So, yeah, we do, yes. But what you do notice are the butterflies. I do notice the butterflies. They're just a marvelous array of butterflies. As soon as the medicine walk went in, the butterflies started coming.
That's interesting.
And the other thing we have absolutely no Colorado beetles on our potato. Nothing. No Colorado beetles, nothing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I know farmers have terrible troubles with growing potatoes and Colorado beetles, but there is some system working here with some insects, and there's some insects in the soil that I can't identify.
Yeah.
And I think they go chomp on the Colorado beetles.
Got it.
Yeah, it's different. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is different. Yeah.
It's very regenerative.
Yeah, it is. And the one thing I need to have now that I'm getting Neolithic and old, I will need some help in here, fairly.
Mm-hmm.
And I would, it would be good. I don't know, it would be good to have, to pass on this knowledge, hand to hand, really. Because
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about the Millennium Project that you did when you?
that was really something. That was
Mhm.
really something. That was the biggest project of trees of North America that ever happened, and it was quarters of a million trees. And I had plant sales before that. I sold, divided up some of my really rare plants and had plant sales, and generated the money for that by plant sales. Used the money for the Millennium Project, and the first thing off that came here, because they were Juglans nigra thomasi, are the nuts, black walnuts that produce the best timbers. And the timbers, if you plant one of those nuts today and you have, a child today, then that will pay for the child's university in the future, because they're so valuable. There's no black wood around, and this only grows in North America, so we have really the prize of the lot here of the trees. So anyway, what happened is we were doing the first big day of the Millennium Project, and people are coming from all over the blinking place. But the first lot that came were the Hells Angels.
Oh, really?
And Chris heard them coming down the road, right? And coming down our road, I mean.
Yeah.
They were in formation, coming into the garden, like they were in proper formation. And I looked at Chris and I said, "Who are they?" And Chris said, "They're the Hells Angels." And I said, "Oh God, we're dead."
You're stepping on their turf.
Yes. And they had all their leathers and, bangles and ear bangles and everything. And I thought, "Oh, man, we're dead. They're going to pick a gun up and they're going to shoot both of us." So, I mean, that shows how stupid you can be. So anyway, they were charming. And what they wanted was the Juglans nigra thomasi. They had done their homework.
Wow.
They knew that if they planted these, they would have thousands of dollars worth of money in the future.
Wow.
So anyway, we gave them what they wanted, and they were really nice. I mean, they were really nice. But I honestly can say I've never in my life been so happy to see the tail end of anything.
That's hilarious.
Like they turned all the bikes, and they had gorgeous bikes, the Harley Davidsons. I mean, their bikes were polished to absolutely to speckling and to diamond, color, and they turned a whole pile of them, and off they went. So anyway, that proceeded, that just kind of kept going.
That's got to be a chapter in the next book. Selling to the Hells Angels.
Yeah. I mean, so that was the highlight. So how are we for time?
We're doing good. I just wanted to ask you one last question about climate change. Is just with your knowledge and sort of this bridging of the old and the new, and the amount of insight you have on all this stuff, what do you think the impact we can have on climate change is by using that bridge of information?
The most important thing that I have learned is that we have lost or are losing the photosynthetic reaction, and too much forest has come down.
Mm-hmm.
The forests of the planet have been there. It's taken 400 million years to maybe 500 million years to grow and to mature and to become the top. They are the peak of the system of flora in the world. We are supposed to be the peak of intelligentsia in the world, and they're the peak of the flora system. What we have done is stupidly taken down the ancient forests.
Right.
Forests and the ancient forests. And what that photosynthetic reaction does is it mops up the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. All forests do that. Some forests do it better than others. Canadian forests were prime forests for mopping up carbon dioxide. And the greedy people took them down, paid per stump of the great Canadian forest and the American forest and the forests all over the world. And now we have to replant the forests. We have to protect the forests that are there. And if we can do that, if we can, one person of the billions of people, 8 billion people, every single person of that 8 billion must one tree per years, he will rebalance, reorder the carbon dioxide, the forest biome. If we can do that, it's not a difficult thing to do. Just get a spade, an acorn, and a shovel. That's all you have to do. We can do this again. It buys us time to bring the CO2 in the atmosphere down into the 300s. We can do that. We're home. We're home free. And manage the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere with the computer systems that we have, and maybe use it to regenerate with the power of the sun, the necklace of petroleum. Petroleum products are just a necklace of carbon for the use in running our machinery. We have to keep it strictly to that area. That's all. All we need to do. That's all. And you know, I consider that the impediment to our lives are the political systems. We all pay taxes. We're paying our political system to make good judgments for you and me, good judgments in all arenas that make civil society work. It should not have to be that people like you and me are figuring out how to stop climate change. We are, and we have. Now we have to pass it over to politicians and say, you got to listen to us, babe. You've got to listen to us. Stop these wars and get started on peace in the world and fix the planet.
And it's not necessarily going to be taking plastic straws out of cups, though that might do something. It's more of replant the forests, speak with people like yourselves who understand the diversity that's needed to maintain forest health.
I mean, you know, just think about this. There was a diversity conference, and of all of the people in the world, I'm probably one of the most known persons. I've got awards for diversity. Right? Never asked, not a whisper. So I am speaking to and for ordinary people. And my film, The Call of the Forest, is for ordinary people to watch. All I can do. And write these books. I've got another book coming out, which is really being taken seriously now all over the world. And the science and soul of the forest. For young people, I will not leave this planet and have these grandchildren and children crying and wondering and upset about what the future is going to hold for them. And some of them think they have no future. Well, we the people will make sure there is a future.
Well, Diana, let's wrap up on that. I think that's a great place to leave. And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today. And like I mentioned in the beginning, I've really enjoyed reading the first book, and I plan to read the other ones as well to give myself as much of your knowledge as you're willing to pass on. But I just wanted to thank you again for everything that you do and all the research and writing that you've been doing to pass your knowledge on.
Well, this is for you, and let me know how this three-phase podcast goes. Just let me know about it so I can spread the word too for you.
I will share it with you when it's ready to go.
Good on you, and say hi to your mom again. And
I will.
Your father it sounds as though he makes a damn good lunch.
I think he does.
You can tell her that.
Keeping everybody fed.
Yeah, that's right. Hopefully, if we're down in Halifax, we will shake her teapot.
Yes, you should. You should, for sure.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody, for listening to the episode. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, and follow the podcast to get notifications when new episodes drop. Each week, I send out my routine report through Substack. In this weekly email, I'm sharing what I've been learning, listening to, and reading, as well as keeping you up to date with stuff coming down the pipeline from programs, podcasts, Instagram, and everything else in between. Click the show notes link to subscribe and stay informed. And a quick reminder for you about Bioptimizer's discount. The products I've been using from them have been an absolute game changer for me and many others. Remember, you can get 10% off your order by using the code 3phase10. That's the number 3, PHASE10 on any of the products. And until next episode, stay well.